Greetings, and welcome to the Thirsty Mage. I've been teasing this episode for probably a few months now. I know it's been on again, off again, but it's finally the time that we're going to be talking about the Nintendo and Squaresoft collaboration, Super Mario RPG. As always, I'm your host and unpaid spokesperson for decades-old Final Fantasy titles, David Lloyd. And we have a first-timer on the show tonight. He is the NWR contributor and man who had to be carted on the way into the pub, but luckily he did not need his fake ID. Mr. Xander Morningstar.
In the flesh.
And joining us as well from the other side of the continent, Thirsty Mage regular and RPG connoisseur, Mr. Jordan Rudek.
Hi David, how are you tonight?
I'm doing pretty good, you?
Yeah, I can't complain. I mean, we don't have any blizzards or snowstorms keeping people indoors in Vancouver, so I'm happy to be here.
Just those Midwestern Americans.
That's right.
And rounding out the crew, owner of Nintendo World Report, and the only other gentleman on the Mage that enjoys beer as much as me, Mr. Neal Ronaghan.
I feel bad because if you can't tell by my voice, which hopefully I'm masking it a little bit, I just probably sound a little bit deeper than usual. I'm dealing with a sinus infection, so I'm drinking during this. It's water because I need to live. I need to live.
I guess it's probably a good idea not to fall into a coma. Mixing medication and beer.
Yeah. I mean, like, I would like a beer. That sounds very good. If I were to have a beer, it would probably be... I think I have some Namaste from Dogfish Head in the fridge. That's probably what I'd take.
I can let you off the hook for 1 week.
I can't see Neal falling into a coma on the episode where we're covering one of his favorite role-playing games of all time.
Yeah, I mean, we'll get to it, but like Super Mario RPG, I will admit it has many flaws. It is legitimately probably my favorite game of all time. Mainly because I don't think there's any way that I'm here now without Super Mario RPG being in my life.
Wow, that's awesome.
But yeah.
I'll go ahead and I'm drinking for sure, and so I'll go ahead and talk about the beer. If anyone else is drinking, they can speak up, but I'm assuming I'm probably the only one. So tonight I'm going with an Ottawa special from the Big Rig Brewery called Release the Hounds. This is a black IPA. It won a gold medal somewhere. I don't know. I get distracted by the pretty medallions, like seal of approval from Nintendo. And this one is unfiltered, dry hopped, layered with roasted malts, and it's a lower alcohol content, only 6.2, so it's not too bad. And it's it's got hoppy flavor and a little bit of mocha kick to it. So I'm enjoying it, and I don't have it too often because it's a little bit difficult. It's kind of on the other side of Ottawa, and it's a pain to get there. So if I'm in the area, I'll pick it up, but otherwise, it's only at the brewery. Like a restaurant that one of the retired Ottawa senators started up, actually.
Now, so 6.2%, David. That's basically non-alcoholic beer for you, I think.
Yeah,
considering what you normally drink here.
Yeah, no, I had my favorite 10.6 Scotch ale on the weekend. So,
oh my gosh, that's so strong.
Yeah.
I will say that even though I have been carded before, I no longer need a fake ID. I do have a Stella Artois in front of me right now. That's
a pretty good Genera beer. I'll chime in with that. I know David and I usually try to go craft, but Stella's like, I think Stella's pretty good. If I'm like at a wedding or something, that is a go-to if it's available.
Yep, that's definitely what I would go with over, say, a Molson or a Labatt's or a Coors.
Oh yeah, all your Canadian stuff. Pabst Blue Ribbon is probably my favorite generic beer, but because that's the beer that drinks like a soda.
The Canadian equivalent of a generic beer for us would be like Alexander Keith.
Okay, yeah.
Now, I don't want to disappoint the fans who listen every week to see what crazy drink I'm going to be having, a crazy non-alcoholic drink I'm going to be having this week. It's actually fairly basic. I've just got a decaf coffee, double, of course. And Neal, you know what double means?
God, it's a Tim Hortons thing, isn't it?
Yep.
So when you get a double coffee,
I forget what it is.
Means 2 creams and 2 sugars.
Okay, that makes sense. I'm not a coffee guy, So that's why, like, I've heard people say that, but it bounces off me because it's not relevant
I
information.
mean, I don't know how it works if in the States people could do it, but in Canada, or at least in Vancouver, David, you tell me if this is the same in your neck of the woods. You can pretty much go to any place that serves coffee and ask for a double-double, and they'll know what you mean. So I could go to McDonald's or A&W, obviously Tim Hortons, and say, I want like a medium double-double. And they'll know what that is, right? So that's kind of a neat thing. It's the same for you, David?
I don't know if that's a specific... I don't think that's common into America at all. Or at least, like, I mean, maybe on some of the Canadian... Like, maybe Seattle will do it. I don't know. But, like... I don't think that's come through here. Maybe I'll ask some of my coffee drinking friends to be like,
at least at Tim
track?
Hortons around you, I would be curious if that's something that people say.
No, that's where I've definitely heard that before. At Tim,
it's definitely in the Canadian dictionary.
Yeah, everyone in Canada, you got to,
along with your loonies and toonies,
just like Timbits.
It's on the citizenship test.
Yeah.
If you don't know what a double is, you get kicked out of the country.
So with Timbits, when my wife and I got into like our Tim Hortons kick a couple, I guess it was many years ago, because we actually we were in Toronto in that area for our honeymoon, because I'm very pale, so going to a beach did not sound like a great idea. But going to Toronto in that area was really fun, and we called them, instead of Timbits, Horton Holes, because it was funny.
That's awesome.
Because I think it was one of those things where we were like, oh, what do they call them again? Like Horton Holes or something. Yeah. And then it just stuck.
No one really uses that term donut holes anymore. Like when I was younger, like you'd go to a donut shop and you could buy donut holes, right? Like a dozen donut holes or something. But now I feel like that, I guess no one wants to say the word hole too much. So donut hole has just kind of exited the lexicon or something like that.
Yeah, like we have, Dunkin' Donuts has Munchkins.
Yeah. They've all got different like kind of names
it's
for their brand.
Donut Talk here at Nintendo Reports.
that's right. Yeah, that's my bad. I brought up the coffee, so I started it. But
no, I mean, I feel like every episode we have to talk about Tim Hortons now.
Yeah.
Then can we talk about God? What's the Stan Mikita's Donuts joke in Wayne's World, which I saw. I rewatched Wayne's World shortly after I went through my Tim Hortons phase. Yeah. And then that joke clicked for me, and I almost died.
Man, I haven't seen that movie since it came on.
But it's also
on VHS or something.
So the weird thing is that like there is I forget what theme park it is. I think it's in Virginia. But I went to a theme park in Virginia. I want to say King's Dominion, maybe. That in like 2005 had a Stan Mikita's Donuts. And like there was like it was like a roller coaster called like the Hurl or something, and it was a Wayne's World themed roller coaster.
Yeah,
but awesome. It's just the fact that like this is like 15 years after Wayne's World was a thing.
Yeah,
and it was still there,
and just at some random theme park, not even at like Universal or some like Hollywood or kind of movie theme.
Yeah, like I think it was.
Park.
I think it was owned by Paramount.
Okay,
or at least at the time it was.
Yeah, that would be pretty random otherwise if it was just some random place with no affiliation to it.
Yeah, because that's what like you have your Universal and your Disney, and then like Six Flags has the ties to Warner Brothers, which is why they always have the DC characters and
right.
Bugs Bunny and stuff. And then Paramount had a bunch, and they have like weird properties, and there's all sorts of goofy licensing going on.
Yeah, I think my favorite Tim Hortons pop culture is in How I Met Your Mother. When Barney goes to Toronto, I think he's like going to meet with Robin or something in Toronto. And he ends up in a Tim Hortons, and he starts chirping on Canadians, and they end up beating the shit out of him in Tim Hortons.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then it cuts to him like back at the apartment with Cass and stuff, and he's like, "Yeah, those idiot doctors, they forgot to charge me, idiots."
Yeah, they had some good Canada-US jokes in that show, actually. Yeah, I've seen it through a bunch of times, and yeah, it's pretty entertaining.
Yeah.
Alrighty, well, we better move on and get to the topic of the night, Super Mario RPG. So, just a little bit of quick facts. So, it was released back in 1996 for the Super Famicom and Super Nintendo. March 9th in Japan, May 13th in North America. Basically, the whole thing came from a mutually attractive partnership between Nintendo and Squaresoft. Miyamoto had been putting Mario into pretty much every genre there was at that point, and RPGs was one of the ones that he hadn't worked with yet, and Squaresoft was the big player back then. The only problem was that Squaresoft was was having tremendous success in Japan, but not in the West. It was just not. It wasn't clicking with the West the way they would hoped. So there was a good match there, and Squaresoft was hoping that the Mario name would be able to propel them to some popularity in the West. But based on the sales figures, it doesn't seem to have worked. And Super Mario RPG ended up selling 2 million units back then, and so again it was big in Japan, but only sold about 660,000 of those in North America. And then when you compare that to Final Fantasy III, that was about 75% of what Final Fantasy III ended up.
It's funny, Dave. We look at those numbers, and you think, oh, it's only 660,000, only 860,000, and we forget that RPGs in the Super Nintendo era just didn't sell that many copies, right? Like, we regard those games so highly, but yeah, especially in America. I mean, they weren't mainstream yet, and we look back at them so fondly. And people love role playing games now. They're bigger, but they're still. And back then, they were still very niche, a very niche genre.
Yeah, and I don't think it's Super Mario RPG failed. I don't think it was. I think it quietly met expectations and didn't do much more than that.
Yeah.
Well, it really seems to have grown. Like the affinity for it, I think, has grown, because even to have it on the Super Nintendo Classic, when I was looking up the figures, I think there was about 5 million classics ended up being sold so far, and I know Super Mario RPG is one of those games that people go towards when they're go at first, which I'm sure Xander can. That's how he ended up playing it. I believe was on the SNES Classic.
Yes, it is. It's funny that I had never played it up until that console was released. And I think a lot of people, especially in Europe, they didn't have access to that game until 2008 when it was released on the Virtual Console for the Wii. So it's funny how even though it quietly met expectations, like Neal said, it's become not only more widely well received but also more available as the years have gone by.
Well, and we haven't even seen a remastered version or anything like that, and I would imagine it's because of licensing issues between Nintendo and Squaresoft would be my guess, although I can't say for certain.
Yeah, because I think it might be one of those things where Nintendo owns the rights to the game, but Square might have some stake in the characters.
Yeah, I definitely saw. I don't remember where it was, but I saw there was a thing about Geno, and there was this great big Square saying, "We own this character."
Yeah, he made an appearance in the follow-up Mario and Luigi Superstar Saga as an Easter egg character, but he was removed in the 3DS remake, presumably because of that.
That would be a good reason why, I guess. It'd be nice to see. I don't know if we necessarily need remastered. In its current state, I think it still holds up. So, and then with the
I never played it, but I thought it held up fine. Some of the platforming was a little questionable, but I thought it worked.
Yeah, and I think the art style might not, a lot of that pre-rendered stuff doesn't age as well as some of the the 2D pixel art. But I think the game, outside of the isometric perspective being a little difficult for platforming, like Xander said, I don't know what you'd do to remaster this. I'd rather see them iterate on the world, and I think that the way that Mario RPGs have been going over the past 25 years, that's never going to happen.
Yeah, I think they've moved on. Even when you look at where they went right after, this is unique. It's
yeah. I don't think we're ever gonna have Nintendo and Square working together in the way that they did on Super Mario RPG. Obviously, they had a good almost decade where they didn't work together at all, but now they're on generally friendly terms. But I think if you look at stuff Cloud is playable in Smash Brothers. However, there are literally 2 Final Fantasy songs in Smash Brothers. That's it. No remixes, just 2 songs.
Yeah, it's funny. It's almost like they're playing nice, but they're not playing that nice. They're acquaintances rather than good friends or something like that. It's funny. We're getting all these Final Fantasy games this year that previously were platform or company exclusive or exclusive to Sony. And now they're finally coming to Switch and Xbox too. But it still feels like they don't have the relationship that they did back in the Super Nintendo days, for sure.
Feels like a couple of divorced parents that are trying to get along for their kids' sake.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's weird because if you do look at that kind of Smash Brothers comparison, because I think that if you do look at the third party characters, that is representative of maybe where their relationships are with Nintendo, or I guess in some cases maybe specifically Sakurai, but like Konami, Bandai Namco, Sega,
Capcom,
Capcom all were like, take what you want. Like I think with Konami, I think there was something recently with Sakurai where he basically even just said like the only reason why the Belmonts are in the game is because people like they were voted on in the character poll. And then they started talking to Konami, and I think Konami was like, "Wait, we have video games? Sure. You want to pay us some money for it? All right."
Yeah, it's interesting that even when like the Wii was at its height, that had been several years after the split between Nintendo and Square. I think it was Konami that was putting out those like Castlevania Rebirth, Contra, something. You'd have thought that
you got my Final Fantasy Chronicles. My Life as a Dark Lord.
Right. That's about the extent of that.
Yeah.
You would have thought that they would have done something with the games from the SNES, but kind of radio silence. And as someone who like never really had Square as a available thing to play growing up, it feels like they have not been a part of Nintendo until now. Until Cloud is in Smash, and then all of these Final Fantasy games are coming to Switch. It's a very interesting time.
Yeah. I mean, although I guess thinking back to the Wii, like they did, like their games did show up on Virtual Console. I think later than a lot of the other things. Although I think ActRaiser, I mean, technically that's a Square Enix game, but like the Final Fantasy games and Chrono Trigger did come to Super Nintendo Virtual Console, and they did do stuff with Final Fantasy IV: The After Years. I believe, I think it debuted on mobile first, but that was like flip phone mobile. But then it did come out episodically on WiiWare, if memory serves correctly.
Well, Crystal Chronicles was GameCube, right?
Yeah, that was the big return.
And part of that, we also got the ports, right? We got Final Fantasy III came to DS. We got Final Fantasy IV, the remake, came to DS as well. Chrono Trigger came to DS. It's funny that we got a lot of these ports that, the Final Fantasies all came to GBA, but Super Mario RPG never got anything like that, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, on Game Boy Advance, actually, Square was there in spades. Mm-hmm. They did, 18 million Mana games that all are bad. They did the really great Final Fantasy 5 and 6 Advance games. Mm-hmm. And I think they did, I'm pretty sure they did other stuff in that era, too.
Final Fantasy Tactics for GBA, great Final Fantasy Tactics Advance.
You also wonder, with the supposed leak of SNES games coming to Nintendo Switch Online, if since there's Square and Enix support on the SNES Classic, if there's going to be even more support with that SNES Online game system, since they're putting so many of their current Final Fantasy games on there.
We talked about that kind of at the end of our last episode. We were kind of speculating about, if Super Mario RPG will come to the Switch first, or will we get a new Paper Mario RPG or a new Mario and Luigi RPG or something like that. And I think the fact that you got Super Mario RPG on the SNES Classic, that was the first game I played on it too, just because I knew how manageable it was, 10-hour RPG pretty much, if you know what to do. And I think that's an easy fit on the Switch. Man, I'd love to have that game portably. It was so disappointing that it never came to the 3DS Virtual Console.
Yep.
When they got Super Nintendo games, I thought that was a shoo-in, but it never happened. So really looking forward to that one coming to the Switch hopefully soon.
It'll be interesting if we see any Square titles on, if the Super Nintendo Online opens up, if any of that will be Square.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they had some stuff on the Classic, but with all the support they've been putting on the eShop now, you'd think that that's kind of like the best of both worlds.
Well, it depends how much
David's still waiting. David's still waiting for Final Fantasy to come to the NES Switch Online game, so I think that has to happen first.
I'll be the first to review that the second it's on there. Let me tell you, and I will play it from beginning to end, and I'll play it.
I'm gonna race you. If that happens, we'll do a live Twitch speed run. Yeah.
Oh,
we could play it together. That's right. Yeah.
We could have a speed run, or we could have a one where it's like you have to play 4 thieves or 4 ninjas or something.
Oh no! We don't have all. That'd be all of 2019, pretty much.
You can switch between who's controlling it, right? So I guess you could pick your party, and then all right, your turn. Go ahead.
Okay, David, you do the marsh cave. I'll do the other easy parts.
then I'll be like, I'm gonna have a nap to go do some grinding for a while. Let me know when we're moving on.
Yeah. If we were 4 thieves, you'd come back. I'd be the same level. There's just nothing I could do.
That's right. I ran from a lot of fights though.
Yeah,
I think that'd be a very funny video series. Just like someone watching a stream of 2 people play an RPG back and forth.
Yeah, but I can't afford to smash my Switch console and buy another one. So David, maybe if you want to take the reins on that.
Well, we'll see. My only thing is we don't know how much the developers are making on the titles that get into the online. Mm-hmm. So you almost wonder if Square's like, well, no, we don't want to be in there. We'll just port our own, if they just have a standalone Chrono Trigger or something, right?
Yeah, or do a compilation of games or something like that. Yeah.
Okay. The Square Enix Afternoon Collection.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, that's what SNK did. That's what Sega did. Right? These collections I think they're doing pretty well. Right? People are really interested in them. They seem to be reviewing pretty well too. So I could see. I don't know if it's really Square's bag, but putting together 3 or 4 16-bit RPGs, put together Final Fantasy 4, 5, and 6 or something like that. I mean, that'd be pretty awesome, I think.
Well, if they want to...
I mean, everybody should play Final Fantasy 5. It's the best Final Fantasy game that's not called Chrono Trigger.
If Square wants to finance the never-ending development of Final Fantasy 7 and Final Fantasy 16, they could just sell a collection, just have truckloads of money dropped off at the front door for all these collections, and then they'll be set for...
Do you think Metroid Prime 4 will come out before Final Fantasy 7?
I don't think so. No, I think
I think Final Fantasy 7 will come out before then, but it might be the same year.
No,
because it's episodic. I think you'll get the first episode of FF7 Remake.
I think it's a trick question anyway, because I think neither one will come out. They'll both just be in internal for eternal development.
We're gonna bypass
the world will end before those games come out.
Final Fantasy 7 Remake is not even a real game. It's just a government mandated guaranteed income for a bunch of game developers.
They're ever the optimist on our podcast.
There is no intention to actually release the game. It's just to provide set income. That's all. It's just a prop up Square for a while.
There's a whole conspiracy here. Did Final Fantasy 7 even exist in the first place? Did we ever go to the moon? I don't know. But hypnosis.
Yeah. Well, we better get back to Super Mario RPG. Maybe we'll talk about the people behind it now. Starting with, we might as well start with Miyamoto, the overseer.
The overseer. It's that's a threatening name.
Well, it was picked on purpose because I'm pretty sure that Miyamoto was ready to stab somebody if they try to put a sword into Mario's hand in that game.
Yeah, I mean, he probably also didn't want to have a story in this at all. So that's Miyamoto's MO. Yeah. I mean, I guess at the same time, this would have been Miyamoto working on Super Mario 64. So maybe he was distracted by having things reinventing 3D gaming as we know it.
No, that's quite possible. They definitely... I know one of his big things and Nintendo obviously didn't want to change the spirit of Mario. That's why you still have, even though it's isometric, you still have the platforming that you don't see Mario using weapons. The whole aesthetic is still the Mushroom Kingdom. And then if we just talk about the team, I'll start with the directors. It's funny, doing the research on the game, I realized how many people a lot of this team that worked on Super Mario RPG worked together already on a game called Live Alive, which was a Japanese only game, Super Nintendo game, or Super Famicom game, I guess. which actually sounded pretty neat. It almost sounded almost like Chrono Trigger in a way, because there was 8 separate stories with characters from different time periods. So there was a story going on that was following cavemen. There was a story about a samurai in feudal Japan. There was all these different stories connected, and a lot of the same people, like kind of the nuts and bolts people were all working on this game, and even the composer, which we'll get to in a bit, worked on Live Alive. So it's pretty neat to see that a lot of the same people moved on. But the 2 directors for this game were Shihiro. Oh my, leaving me with the Japanese names.
This is why I'm just letting you take this, because I don't know how to pronounce his names.
Yeah. So I'll try again. Chiriyo Fujioka and Yoshihiko Makawi. We'll go with that.
I think Maikawa.
Makawa.
So even outside of the directors, like, this is just a hodgepodge of Square developers, like, with experience across the board. I think a lot of these people weren't in senior roles before Super RPG, because Super RPG coming out in 96 would have kind of been square in the middle of Chrono Trigger's development wrapping, which that was the super team of all super teams, and then Final Fantasy VII and what would eventually become that game on PlayStation is what everybody went to after Chrono Trigger wrapped.
Yeah, and then I even saw that near the end of Chrono Trigger, they had actually started Final Fantasy VII, but pulled a bunch of people off of that project to get Chrono Trigger done. So that definitely would have been Square's. Chrono Trigger was Square's focus.
Yeah, because if you look between Final Fantasy 6 and 7, it's the longest gap for Final Fantasy games, I think, because I know like 4, 5, and 6, at least, I think came out in a span of like 92 to 94 or something ridiculous. Yeah. And then you had a 4-year gap before Final Fantasy 7 came out, which, makes sense considering that they basically, went from Super Nintendo to PlayStation in that time.
Yeah. Well, and apparently that was when they changed over all their computers. They had all the new 3D stuff. So they were learning that and seeing what they could do with that, which is, I guess, is another story that we could talk about on another episode. How Square went from developing a Nintendo 64 game to a PlayStation game. But yeah, like you said, there was kind of a hodgepodge. Like the one director, he was a composer he was actually a composer himself on home computer titles. He worked for Zalsoft, and the first game he worked on was. And this is not the game everyone will be thinking of, but it was called Earthbound. It was a Earthbound before Earthbound for a home computer. And then he ended up moving over after, I think, about 7 or 8 games that he composed for. He moved on to Square as a writer. And the first game that he worked on with Square was for Game Boy, Final Fantasy Legend 3, which is the Saga series. When it first started, Saga was a Final Fantasy Legend.
Well, that's what it was called in America.
Yeah.
It was Saga in Japan, and they were like, how can we market this? Call it Final Fantasy.
Yep. And then Super Mario RPG would be his debut directorial role.
Yeah, and I guess whatchamacallit, Maikawa and Fujioka they basically just became the Mario and Luigi guys. Like shortly after Super Mario RPG wrapped, they both left Square and formed Alpha Dream. Their first game was this weird Game Boy Advanced RPG that I think had like turn-based battles and all sorts of kind of experimental things that kind of came out of Super Mario RPG. This game called Tomato Adventure that I think never left Japan. But then Nintendo was like, hey, you guys, how about you make a Mario and Luigi RPG? And they said yes. Little did they know, they entered a Faustian bargain, and that's the only games they would ever be allowed to make ever again.
It's interesting. Nintendo was obviously impressed by the work they did with Super Mario RPG, or they wouldn't have given them those 2 characters to work on, right? Obviously, Nintendo's so protective of their IP for so many years, so they must have had a lot of faith in those 2 to say, okay, hey, we want you to make a new series or a spin-off series of Super Mario RPG.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing, is that actually I mean, Paper Mario kind of predated Mario and Luigi. And for the most part, I think or at least the developers associated with Paper Mario at the outset didn't have as many ties to Super Mario RPG. I think you had, on the Nintendo side, those people, had experience with Super Mario RPG, but like the Square developers didn't really show up there. Although weirdly, they would kind of come back around later. There's a couple guys, most notably, all right, I'm going to mess this name up. Taro Kudo, who he worked on Super Mario RPG and then left Square almost immediately after and formed this company, Love to Leak, in 1996. And they made a couple games, Moon Remix RPG Adventure and UFO A Day in the Life. And then joined this company called Vanpool, which actually, as I'm bringing up just to look at some of the list, get a more exact list of games that they made. Vanpool helped out in Mario and Luigi Superstar Saga, making mini games in that game, but they also did stuff like Freshly Picked Tingle's Rosy Rupee Land, Dylan's Rolling Western is their jam. They also came in to help make Paper Mario Sticker Star and Color Splash, which, don't hate them, it was a contract job. But yeah, so that's there's people that are working on modern Paper Mario games that have ties to Super Mario RPG. And then there's still a wealth of people there that stayed at Square for a while. Kenichi Nishi is listed in the credits. He's one of the founders of Skip, which was another Nintendo-friendly company. There's a lot of people on the staff that went on to do things. Just at the time that this game was made, they didn't really have those resumes. Yeah, I don't know. Does anybody else have anything to say, or should I just keep on talking about all the more cool bits about the development?
Well, I think it's time for someone to talk about the show notes where it says Mystic Quest with 3 exclamation points.
Yeah, I think Mystic Quest was kind of an influence on this game in that Super Mario RPG seemed to be a bridge game for American audiences. And the last time that Square tried that was Final Fantasy Mystic Quest. And there's some crossover in developers from Mystic Quest into Super Mario RPG. Mystic Quest is like a classic style turn-based Mario RPG battle system that, I don't know, inexplicably you go from battle to battle on a world map. Maybe not the smoothest idea, not a terrible game, pretty good soundtrack. But a lot of those ideas seemingly kind of went forward in the Super Mario RPG, at least from my kind of view on it. Yeah.
Yeah, Mystic Quest is funny because it's pretty straightforward. You can't really get lost. It's very linear. You only have 2 characters in your party. The main character, who I believe never leaves your party, and then kind of a revolving door of cast members who have different abilities. And, of course, the abilities that they have are always very useful for the time that you have them, right? It's kind of they're almost like a key unlocking the door of a particular dungeon, so to speak. Mystic Quest is funny. Little side story, at my recycling depot, they have a bin for like electronics, and I saw a really beat up Super Nintendo in there and a bunch of games, and one of those games was Mystic Quest, and I picked it up, and I have Mystic Quest on my shelf now because I've grabbed it out of the recycling depot. So that's that.
I mean, you saved it.
I rescued it. Yeah, that's right. I had to hold on to that precious commodity for sure.
At least it's got a happy home.
It does.
In the Toy Story 3, you have the claw.
I don't know if it'll ever see the light of a Super Nintendo ever again, but it's on the shelf and you can see it there. So, Mystic Quest is funny. Not a very good game. I don't think it did. Yeah, Neal, you're right. The soundtrack was pretty good, actually, surprisingly good considering how bad the gameplay was. But it's funny that there's some kind of carryover or maybe overlap between that and Super Mario RPG in terms of the trying to make a role-playing game that's accessible. And Mystic Quest is kind of the maybe the more failed attempt at that, whereas Super Mario RPG, I know it didn't sell well, but if you kind of look back at it, like we're doing now, I think that there's a lot of things we still like about that game. Certainly much more than we did about Mystic Quest. I don't think many people look back at Mystic Quest very fondly.
Yeah, and I'll just touch quickly on. I talked about it a little bit with how the programmers and the designers were kind of Square, not big names, but they, like I said, they had worked on Live Alive and really didn't do a whole lot afterwards. I don't think they. I know the lead programmer Fukaya ended up working on Final Fantasy Chronicles. But for the most part, like you said, they kind of just faded into the background, the nuts and bolts people, unfortunately. But the next person we're going to talk about, I think she deserves a lead-in. I don't think it's just enough to talk about it.
Yeah.
I'll turn it up. So who wants to talk about the goddess?
Oh man, if the next 5 minutes were just listening to those tracks, I wouldn't complain. I can take this at least to start, and Neal, if you want to follow up here, that'd be cool. So of course we're talking about Yoko Shimomura. At this point, probably most known for her work on Street Fighter 2, which is just an awesome soundtrack that you can still go back and listen to.
Although really I think the thing with Street Fighter 2 was a hodgepodge of different composers.
Right,
although, what is it? Because all I know, I forget what exactly one she did, but she remixed it for Smash Brothers.
Yeah, Vegas theme, I believe, is one.
Yes, yeah, Vegas theme, and that was so the one where she's like. There's a quote from her, I think, that came out around that, where it's just that, like, yeah, they asked me what song I wanted to do, so I did one that I made 30 years ago. Yeah. And, like, I've learned so much since then. It's really, like, I mean, all of her remixes. She also has an amazing remix in the latest in Smash Brothers Ultimate of Cass's theme from Breath of the Wild. That is, it's so killer.
Well, she did the music for the game you just picked up. Did she not?
Yeah, Kingdom Hearts. Kingdom Hearts is actually, I think at this point, Kingdom Hearts is probably her best known work. Just because of how massive that series is, and she's been doing that since the PlayStation 2 original, which came out when Xander was 5.
Now,
so for almost Xander's entire life, Yoko Shimomura has been making Kingdom Hearts music.
It's funny. I didn't really realize this until I looked at what she had worked on just as in a full list. And there's all the Kingdom Hearts games, all of the Mario and Luigi games. There's a little bit of Xenoblade. There's a ton on here. Street Fighter 2, like you mentioned.
Radiant Historia.
Yeah, Radiant Historia. All of these. And a lot of Smash Brothers songs as well. And all of these songs I'd always been surrounded with, and just I'd always loved. I'm very nostalgic for it. And now that I'm kind of like aware of the art form and like who is making these, it's like it's really cool to put a name to that and have a much greater appreciation for the artist or the composer that is creating these, because she shaped a lot of my childhood in a way. And just all these songs. Like, again, I never played Super Mario RPG as a kid. I didn't play it until this past year. But I had heard the Forest Maze song so many times, like, through osmosis of just being a Nintendo fan. I was always nostalgic for it. And so when I heard it for the first time in the game, I was like kind of taken aback for a moment, just because I hadn't really thought about, like, yeah, this is where this game came from. It kind of hit me in a nostalgic way, even though I hadn't played the game before. So it's silly, but very influential composer for sure.
There's something with the music in the game. It just suits every environment so perfectly. Like, they just find the tracks manage to capture the essence of every area that you're in. You really do feel like you're in a happy village, or you're in a mysterious forest, or going underwater or something.
Yeah, so
I'm 5 years old again.
I don't think Nintendo and Square aren't going to sue us, right?
I mean, it's worth it.
Might be Tim Hortons. If Gino is ever a Smash Brothers character, this would be the Smash remix, right?
I mean, I would hope. I also didn't know. I just looking at her list. She did the awesome remix of Magic from Smash Brothers for 3DS and Wii U.
Yeah.
Like, really, just wonderful, wonderful stuff. I mean, she's basically how I started. It's weird because I hear, you always hear a lot of people talking about like Yui Matsu for the Final Fantasy games or Mitsuda, and I mean, I think I've gone into some affection for my love for Yasunori Mitsuda's work because I think he's one of the best too. There's a handful of other guys that I could go on and on about. The dude who did the Ninja Gaiden and Tecmo Bowl soundtracks just put out an album, and it's awesome.
Yeah. I can't wait to hear her Mario and Luigi work when it is on the Switch, inevitably, because as amazing as all the songs that she has composed for that whole series, they've always been on handhelds that have been very limited in their audio quality, and a lot of those, particularly those final fights, like In the Final or what's another one? I always think of In the Final as the first, or Antasma's theme. She does these very big, boisterous finales that you're kind of just shocked that like this is from a Mario game on a handheld. Like what? It's kind of incredible.
Yeah, I mean, she's basically, when I started looking into video game composers, it was because of her, and really because of her work on Super Mario RPG, which when I've kind of determined like why this stood out to me over so many other soundtracks is I think it's the usage of bass, especially in the battle themes. Like, it just like there's a rhythm to it, which I think ties in, I don't know if it's deliberately or not, but with the fact that there's a rhythm element to the game in the combat system, and you have that consistent bass in a lot of those battle themes, that just keeps everything driving. And God, I'm recalling it all right now. That to the point where when David plays the songs, I'm like, wait, how did you know what I was thinking of? It's one of my favorite soundtracks of all time.
Yeah, that bass definitely keeps the gameplay grounded in a way with having those interactive time-based elements. I think that's pretty important. Something weirdly absent from the later Paper Mario games. They are very jaunty and upbeat, like many of her songs, but they are not. They do not rely on the bass very much.
Did you Freudian slip say Paper Mario, or
I'm talking about like Color Splash.
But she did not do
right.
Color Splash.
Exactly. That's my point. As far as a differentiator,
I was confused by what you were saying.
But she did this, Jim.
Yeah.
You guys probably don't appreciate it as much because you didn't play Final Fantasy 15.
No, I play good games.
Yeah, it's worth it.
Neal,
just to hear the
it's
music.
worth playing it for the music. Yeah, honestly.
I've heard the
the
music.
Mario and Luigi games. I know you probably won't play them, but definitely pick up the soundtracks.
David, that is haunting. It is so beautiful. My gosh.
Oh, I love the Final Fantasy 15. That's probably my favorite of her work.
Yeah, the soundtrack is amazing in that game.
But she always captures the emotion of the moment. Like in Final Fantasy 15, like the boss battles and that final battle in the future in Final Fantasy 15, fighting Ifrit and stuff. I was like, my mind was blown. It's just, oh man, she knows.
I didn't realize that she doesn't work for Square anymore. She stopped working for them in 2002, but she's been doing freelance for them since.
She's too good for one company.
Yeah.
I mean,
she's the tie between the divorced parents.
I think composers seem to do a lot better, not as in-house. Even all those Nintendo guys, like I think Koji Kondo might still be in-house, but I know I think Hip Tanaka has been working as a freelance composer for years with Nintendo. Hip Tanaka is the president of Creatures Inc., I think.
Huh.
There's something about being able to kind of spread your wings and try different genres and meet new people and have different experiences that I think has allowed people like Shimomura to just grow and blossom into this wonderful, wonderful creator of music. So Yeah, thankfully, she never made a decision to kind of be tied down to one company or sign any long-term contracts or something like that, because otherwise we might not have so much of this great music.
And I think that another element that really keeps this soundtrack so strong in everyone's minds is that up until this point, all of the Mario titles had been without much of in a way of a story. It's good guy saves bad guy, or saves good girl from bad guy. Whereas this is allegedly the same, but there's a lot more context here. There are other supporting characters that have their own moments, like Mallow and Gino, and so there's a lot more substance to flex your muscles in composing. That's why I think a lot of these arrangements are very impactful. There's no forest maze in Super Mario Brothers 3, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. There's the ghost houses, I guess, but there's not a whole lot of meaning there other than this is a fun game to play.
Yeah, part of that's RPG versus platformer too.
Yeah, that's exactly it, right.
But yeah, I look forward to hearing her work in Kingdom Hearts 3, and I'll probably talk about that on a future Thirsty Mage.
Mm-hmm. And I'm sure we can play a little bit of that then too. I'm pretty sure there's some kind of fair rights when you're reviewing stuff. You can play a little bit of music and get away with it, so that'll be good. Well, how about we move into actually this part was interesting to me because having Xander just played it recently, talking about the gameplay, and because at the time it was they were making new advancements with the time-based attack.
Yeah. Did this game come out prior to Chrono Trigger?
Right after.
Right after,
like
okay.
a year later.
Okay. Well, maybe I don't know how much of an influence there is. It's just like a year later.
So Chrono... Well, I guess the active time battle system...
Well, that's different from the time-based attack.
Yeah.
I know they're not they're not one and the same. I've just been trying to think of like any other possible instance that I could think of where this time-based element could have been born, other than what they were trying to do with what Mario could do in an RPG. And that was keep it interactive, keep control of Mario and company throughout the whole game, even during those turn-based portions in the combat. And it has certainly evolved as the series split into Mario and Luigi and Paper Mario. I think with Mario and Luigi, it is still very much the what would you say, that like the rhythmic press the button at the proper time, kind of in a very over the top fashion, and Paper Mario has kind of been all over the place with it, but by and large it's still like kind of do a quick little mini game or follow the instructions to complete the attack. And that was kind of born with what you would see in Super Mario RPG, like hold down the button long enough to get a bunch of stars that fill up a meter so Gino's laser is very strong, or hit the button as soon as Mario jumps on an enemy or Bowser punches someone, etc. That seems to be the big hook here, is that it's not just choosing something on a menu, it's also following through with that.
I mean, like we mentioned earlier, with Miyamoto having oversight over the game and wanting to make it that really good or solid amalgamation of Mario platforming elements, action elements with an RPG, you get this timing-based combat system, and it's really good. You select a fireball attack, and then you rapidly press a button to throw fireballs, just like you might rapidly press a button to throw fireballs in Super Mario 3 or Mario World or something like that. You swing hammers, you jump, and you press buttons to do extra damage when you jump. So you get a lot of those kind of Mario-like actions, Mario platformer-type actions, but within the realm or the sphere of an RPG turn-based combat system. It is a really kind of, at least for that time especially, a very elegant combat system.
Mm-hmm. It's novel. It keeps you engaged, especially with a game that is so different than what people are used to from what to expect from Mario. And it was also interesting to come back to after having grown up with the Mario and Luigi and Paper Mario series, because when I started this game, I understood that there was timing-based combat, but it was not as handholdy as the later installments would become. I think Toad kind of explains it to you once really fast, and you're kind of left to figure it out. There's not really an on-screen prompt when you have to press the button right away. And I'm not necessarily looking for that, but when you're starting out with this new type of game, you want to get your that muscle memory in.
Back in those days, Xander, they had these things. It was pieces of paper, and they called them instruction manuals.
I mean,
they came in the box.
You're being a dick about it, but you're right.
Yeah, I know. I didn't have the physical copy, and I think the manual is on the Super Nintendo. I could have looked at that.
Is it on the Classic, or is it?
They give you a website to go to where you can look at the PDF.
That's what I thought too. Yeah, it's not. You can't read it on the Classic. You'd have to.
All right. Well, I guess I could have looked up the website and then read a PDF. I know what they are. I used to have them in my GameCube games.
Xander, you brought up an interesting point about kind of trying to figure out the timing, and there's like a mystery element to it, and these aha moments when you actually do hit it, and there's a little sound effect, and you see the reduced damage. Maybe the stars pop out of your character or something like that. I thought that was a really cool thing about the time defense, because you meet so many different enemies throughout the game, and you have to figure out, maybe in a very kind of quick fashion, or you don't have a lot of time to figure out what the timed defense. What the timing is for those for defending attacks, and whether you're doing it kind of semi perfectly or you're 100% accurate and you dodge all the damage entirely. I thought that was a really neat thing to kind of keep you focused on the battles. I think it really helps with the pacing of the game, that because you're so engaged with the battle system, the game goes by at a really good clip. You never feel like you're grinding. You don't really need to grind in the game, but you never feel like battles are that much of a slog because you're constantly doing something. You're not just kind of sitting there letting the battles churn out, and that tedium that you do sometimes get in RPGs with more grinding. That doesn't really happen in a mirror RPG. There's not a lot of down points to the game. It flows by at a really good pace.
Well, the down point for me would have been the platforming. It just it just did not. It felt like another company trying to figure out how to implement platforming. It felt like Miyamoto was like, no, this game's not releasing unless there's platforming, and then everyone looking at each other like, what the hell are we supposed to do?
Yeah,
and this is what they ended up with.
The level where you're trying to get to the Nimbus Kingdom or whatever, and you're climbing up these rainbow jelly bean stalks. I was ready to throw my controller at the TV because I could not.
That's not a great time.
Yeah, that one was. I was like, I really want to love this game right now, but I cannot get this for the life of me. And half the time, it's like there's an invisible block you just have to hit, and then use that as a boost. So it's silly to design platforming in a game where they explicitly are trying to create a cheat for you. And a lot of it was shadow based. It was like, I have to stand here because this is where the shadow is. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know. A lot of people have had minor issues with Paper Mario just because of the weird perspective. I never had a huge problem with it, very rarely. But with this one, I don't know if it was the isometric view and having to work with those shadows, but it was very hard to find depth, especially when you weren't jumping left to right, but you were jumping forward diagonally or backwards. That was always very challenging because I just couldn't tell where I was jumping and what I was grabbing onto. I guess I will finish off with the timing-based combat, in that one element that I think Super Mario RPG does that the later installments didn't necessarily maintain was, even if you use the same attack consistently, depending on what gear you have, the animation for it will be different, and so the timing itself will be different. So like Bowser's basic attack, it could be punching if he has just a glove on, or it could be throwing this chain chomp weighted ball, or it could be breathing fire, and each of those has a different timed out animation, and so the muscle memory there can get kind of hard. And like Jordan was saying, there is a consistent mystery element to finding out when you're supposed to press that button. And sometimes you're not sure if you did it correctly unless you hear that jingle. I wasn't ever sure if I was holding the A button down long enough and getting enough stars, or if I was holding it too long. It's a mystery, but it was an enjoyable one.
Well, maybe if Jordan wants to talk about the mini games.
Yeah, no problem. So one of the really cool things, RPGs are known for having mini games that are a fun distraction from the side quests or the main quest that you're doing, or even grinding. Mini games can just be something different for you to do. So there's a ton of mini games in Mario RPG, considering the size of the game and the length. There's actually a lot of mini little things you can do, diversions to occupy your time, collect extra coins or get frog coins or get special items. I think one of the first ones that you come across is the waterfall. So after you finish the first area and you need to seek out, you take Mallow back to the frog pond to find Frog Fuchsius. You go down a waterfall and you're kind of swimming upstream and collecting coins. And there's two parts to it. One is falling down the waterfall, and one is kind of a river, almost like a river rafting game, but you're riding barrels, almost reminiscent of something like Donkey Kong or something like that. So you're riding on the barrels and you have to jump and avoid fish, but also jump and collect coins that are in midair. I think that's one section where the action part is actually pretty good. I never felt like the jumping or the timing or anything was off, or that the platforming aspect of the mini game there wasn't fun. I really enjoyed those the waterfall, especially as a kind of a first mini game that you see.
I will say, after having played this very recently, I did not find these to be as bad as the platforming, but I would always try them and then try again, and eventually just be like, I don't want to bother with this right now. I'll come back to it, and then I never did.
They're pretty hard.
Yeah.
The funny thing is, you don't even really need to do them because the game is pretty easy on its own. So collecting a lot of coins, you're going to get a lot of coins anyways, and you don't really need that many. I think you max out at 999. Is that right? And you never need to accumulate that many.
Yeah.
There's just not that many things to buy with your coins. Getting the frog coins, though, you can get some pretty good items at the. It's not called Frog Pond. What the hell is the name of that area? Tadpole something?
Tadpole Pond, I think.
Yeah, I the names are escaping me and the characters and stuff too. But the next mini game that you kind of come across at the
Tadpole
Pond, it is. Okay, cool. Another one you come across there is composing music with Toadofsky, which is really good.
As a child, I called him Toad of Sky.
Toad of Sky.
And like as I got a little older, I'm like, oh,
that's what I called him.
Toad of Sky is a great fantasy RPG name, right? Like that kind of makes sense if you come from Dungeons and Dragons or any other fantasy themed games.
Like I was not a classically trained child when I played this game.
But so you have to arrange the tadpoles and play different music. They kind of form different musical notes, and you play a little tune. And if you do those, you get different. I think you get different passes, which let you buy special items. So that's not a bad one. The minecart ride when you get to is it Moleville? You do the minecart ride. It's got this. It's one of those mode 7 looks to it, I think, and it's pretty fast. Again, it's really really hard, but just a nice kind of breaking up of the normal gameplay, just like a little side thing you can do. A couple more. I'm trying to go in order a little bit here, but I think the next one could be the Yoshi racing. That might have even been before, but you go to Yoster Isle or Yoster Isle. It's spelled really funny. Like it's I think it's YO''STER. So I never knew how to pronounce that one. Anyone?
Yoster Isle.
Okay.
I think it's supposed to be like Easter Isle.
Right.
I don't know.
That could be. But all that's really there is you find Yoshi, of course, and you do a little racing mini game. God, I found that mini game really hard.
Was horrible.
I thought that was one of the hardest ones. Trying to win that race, you kind of needed some luck to do it. I was never really good. It's kind of an A and B kind of. You want to press them in succession. A B A B A B, and that's how you run faster. And you have cookies that make you dash a little bit. But yeah, that Yoshi racing game was really tough. There's also the Beetle Race, which you do when you after Booster's Tower. Booster's running to the chapel to marry Peach, and you're chasing him up this hill, and it's a pretty good one. You're collecting beetles to get points, but you're jumping on the Sniffets chasing you to move forward. So I think that might be my favorite one. That's a really fun mini game, I think. There's one I thought we were going to talk about it. It's where you're scaling the cliff. I don't remember what area you're trying to get up to. it's not Nimbus.
I feel like that's Mole Mountains, maybe, or no,
it's later than that. I think it's
Barrel Volcano, maybe.
Maybe, yeah. It's closer to the Nimbus Land part for sure. But you're scaling a cliff, and a Koopa Troopa, he sends out his squad of Koopa Troopas.
Land's End, maybe.
Yeah, that could be. And so he sets up the Koopa Troopas kind of as platforms for you to jump up. And some of them move, and you have to wait for them to move. And the jumping there is really hard because the viewpoint's not great, and we've discussed that's one of those action parts that is just it's hard to do it. It's hard to do it well. It takes a lot of tries. There's a couple others, but the last one I want to end with is Great Guy's Casino. So if you, I don't remember who gives you the pass to the casino, but you kind of talk to people and you get this item that allows you enter Great Guy. After you beat him in Booster's Tower, he goes off and I guess he sets up a casino. And the games in the casino, I think there's like blackjack. There might be like one of those games where you don't want to be the last one to count to 21 or something like that. I think there's roulette or some other casino games. The games in there are really, really hard. And again, I think you kind of just win coins from them. So there's not really a point in doing it. But it is a fun thing to find. It's a fun kind of quest to undertake to get the pass to the casino and get in and play some of the games. So yeah, a lot of different things you can do with the mini games. Some good, some bad. All of them pretty difficult. But just added a lot of variety to the game, and I think really helped with the whimsy and the charm of the game. All these little distractions that you find throughout.
The biggest distraction I found was that room in the pirate ship where it's a bunch of cargo boxes, and
yes. Mario
has to jump in that, and you have to navigate it without actually seeing what you were walking into.
Yeah, that's right.
That was a mini game, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, there's some puzzles on that ship that are pretty tough, and even the puzzles in Bowser's Castle near the end of the game are really tough too. Yeah,
a lot of quizzes.
A couple of neat Easter eggs that I found was Link and Samus are in the game, both sleeping in beds, which is kind of funny. And then Link, when you try to wake up Link, it just plays like a Legend of Zelda sound effect.
Is it the treasure opening?
Yeah.
The treasure sound? Yeah.
And then with Samus, it's she says that she's resting up for Mother Brain.
Yeah.
Also, I think F-Zero's like main ship, I forget what that's called.
Yeah,
I think that makes
Blue
an
Falcon.
appearance.
Yes, that's right. There's three. There's the F-Zero car or ship. I think there's an R-Wing, and there's one more. Is it two F-Zero ones in the R-Wing?
I think
there's three ships, I believe. I think it's Samurai Goro's vehicle, which I don't remember, Captain Falcon's vehicle, and then I think there's an R-Wing as the third ship. They're like in a shop or in a store just on the shelf. Like it's so easy to miss, but it's one of those little things. Like as a kid, I played Mario RPG when it came out in 96, and just seeing little things like that and getting what it was, like getting what they were doing with that, I was like, I thought that was so cool, you know.
I want to say that's in Booster's Tower, which has the
that could be
because he has that whole
I think
segment with the Mario doll, and I think it's also the same place where there is the Easter egg where you walk behind a curtain and turn into
8-bit Mario. Yeah. Oh.
Yeah. So I was actually kind of in the same line of that, messing around and looking at like Super Mario RPG factoids. Apparently early on in development there were plans to have it where working in the Super Mushroom and making Mario big and small, that there would have been some dungeons only accessible by small Mario, but the reason why is because like just small Mario looked ridiculous in this art style.
I think he already looks ridiculous as he is right now. Like I think it's his character design. I think it's always been funny to me.
Yep.
Especially in the new Mario games.
And then David, I got to do this last one. Yeah, you know,
the Final Fantasy nut.
It's my favorite. It's my favorite part of the game. When I found this, I was absolutely blown away by this. So in Monstro Town, one of the later game towns, you find who I think is the most powerful boss in the game. Certainly the most difficult, I thought. And it's totally a nod to Final Fantasy IV. It is this boss Culex. He speaks to you with kind of an antiquated way of speaking, very very threatening, obviously, and he's got like a Final Fantasy character sprite. Even his sprite doesn't really fit in with the rest of the game. You kind of step into this extra dimension, outside the world of the game, and you meet Culex, and he's got these four kind of elemental crystals in front of him, and you basically have to beat the crystals before you fight him. But the kicker, and which I love, it's playing the Final Fantasy IV boss theme, which is one of my favorite songs of all time. And when I found this song and this boss fight in Mario RPG, I guess I was probably 11 or 12 at the time. Like, I couldn't contain that. Like, that's one of those things where I'm like, I have to call all my friends. When people still called people on telephones, I'm calling everybody like, oh my god, in Mario RPG, there's a Final Fantasy boss. Like, I could not believe what I was seeing, and my favorite Easter egg in the game. Sounds like a made-up
story, like a kid would come up with on the playground.
Yeah, and I'm the kind of person who came up with those stories. I told people, like, okay, another tangent, very stupid. I told people that in The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past, that blue treasure chest that you get that's holding a bottle, I told people that if you unlocked that, it opened up a third world in the game. And people believe me. And I like telling stories. I like feeling like I had some special secret that no one else knew about. But this one was true. Like, I was telling people this, and I couldn't believe it. No one could believe it. And I showed people, and man, just what an awesome small thing that you could very easily miss. I bet there's people who've played this game and have no idea about some of these Easter eggs. Right? They're so hidden. They're very, very, it's very easily missable. So,
yeah, it's kind of hard to get to. If I remember, you have to kind of jump through some hoops to get that to play out.
Yeah, you got to collect some orb or some pendant or something, which unlocks the door. I don't even remember where you get it now, but yeah, it's not one of those. You don't just run into him. You have to do some kind of side quest first. So, yeah, awesome though.
Okay, I was gonna say, you were mentioning like the design of Culex looks like a very Final Fantasy design, and I think that kind of is an interesting approach to how they handled all the designs of these characters. It looks like a bunch of Square employees were trying to create characters that would fit in the Mario world, but they all have like a little bit of an off design to them. Like I think of like what's her name, Valentina from the Nimbus Kingdom.
Valentina and Dota are hilarious. Like the way they look,
very
like,
funny.
It's like a claymation kind of style to it, and but obviously very like off the wall and wacky. Like things are, she has huge breasts and she has hair that she's got this huge character sprite and her hair kind of covers her eyes, and even the motions when she attacks, she kind of like whips out her hand kind of like very nonchalantly almost. It's funny.
Or even just any of the basic enemies, they all they don't look like they would necessarily be designed by someone who makes a Mario game. They all have a very eerie design to them.
Yeah, so the bosses especially, I think of someone who probably gave me the most trouble when I first played the game, maybe besides Culex, was is it Yarnovich? You fight him just after you get out of the ship. He gave me a lot of trouble. I had to change my party and figure out what strategy I wanted to use with him. I had a really tough time trying to beat him.
I had a tough time with the Axum Rangers, so I think I'm nod to the Power Rangers.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Very much so.
Yep.
Or Super Sentai.
Yeah.
Giant sword. That was fun.
But maybe before we get into Legacy, I know Neal had mentioned it at the beginning of the show, just how much Super Mario RPG has meant to his video game life.
I mean, really, it was like I'd kind of dabbled in RPGs before. Like by the time I stumbled upon Super Mario RPG, I had already played through Final Fantasy on NES, David. But like I had one of my friends, I did not own a Super Nintendo until like 2002, but one of my friends had a Super Nintendo and he had Super Mario RPG and he had a strategy guide for Super Mario RPG as well. So when we hang out, we would just play through Super Mario RPG, and probably over the course of like the late 90s, me and this friend would just like be like, all right, I guess this is summer. let's play through Super Mario RPG again. And we probably played through it like 5 or so times in that time span. And poring over that strategy guide and like looking at the references, like Culex, when I first came across Culex, I thought he was a villain from a Final Fantasy game that I hadn't played yet. Like at that, like, cause when or at least one, like Super Mario RPG was kind of the gateway, but shortly after was when I started discovering, you know, the other Final Fantasy games, other Super Nintendo RPGs. But yeah, I thought Culex was like, maybe he's the final boss in Final Fantasy V. I don't know. And just playing this game to the level that I did is when I went from like being a guy who like, or I guess being a kid who was like, oh, you know, like Mario's fun, I like jumping around, to just being like super, super into all of this. Looking up who the composer was, seeing who, like, what games by this company also came out. And that's how I kind of got into Square, was because of Super Mario RPG. So I think maybe in a way Nintendo's intention of having this be a gateway RPG, I mean, it worked on me. And I was never the same again after playing Super Mario RPG, because then I was in. Before, like, you can look at my gaming life pre and post Super Mario RPG, because I went from like kid who had a couple video game systems and like liked playing Sonic and Mario and stuff, to person who was way too deep into all of this.
Something with much more substance, not just Mario and Sonic. Yeah. I mean, come on.
Neal, I'm so glad you brought up that strategy guide, because I have to give a shout out.
It's a good strategy
guide.
Those
Super Nintendo era strategy guides, the ones that like official Nintendo ones, they were so awesome. I had the Mario RPG one, I had the Chrono Trigger one. There was like one that came out really early, and it just covered like Super Nintendo games or NES games. I had a bunch of those too. But yeah, those the artwork was so good in those, and they were so thorough and in depth. Like, I read those cover to cover, like, you know, 10, 20 times, like every year or something like that. You know, like I played the games with them. I played it without. I would try not to rely on them. I would just be reading those before I go to bed. Like, that was my reading material. I was just poring over these guides. I mentioned in the Final Fantasy episode we did earlier last year, I had the one for Final Fantasy 1. I think that was that kind of Nintendo Power kind of mailed that to you. But I think if you were a subscriber, you could order the strategy guides maybe at a discount or something like that. I think that's how I got them. And yeah, I loved those Super Nintendo era strategy guides. They were so important to my enjoyment of the games. Like, not relying on them, but just wanting to know all these little details that I wasn't noticing when I was playing the game, you know, telling me about little secrets or strategies, or how many hit points, what was this person's weakness, what abilities did they have. I think that in the Mario RPG one, if I'm not mistaken, they list Booster's abilities as if he was going to be a character in the game. And I remember reading that guide, like, and I think this was not a controversy, you know, we didn't have like the internet as we know it now or anything like that, but I was like, is Booster a character? How the hell do you unlock Booster? And that was a big discussion. We were all trying to figure that out, and the guide almost was teasing that, or you know, kind of foreshadowing that was going to happen. There was some way to get him to join your party, and you couldn't. But it was just so funny to see his attacks listed like he was a character that would join your party. I just remember that kind of controversy, or that element of the guide just being so fascinating to me.
Well, what about you, Xander? Are you feeling like you're more into the RPG genre after playing this one?
Yeah, I'm gonna drop what I'm doing and play Final Fantasy right now. Actually, I joke, but I would like to get into that series. I started the first one and I thought it was really, really boring. So I don't know. We'll see.
That's strike 2.
Yeah,
strike 1 was the fact that you haven't played it yet.
Yeah,
or haven't finished it yet.
Maybe you should track down one of those strategy guides online. That'll help.
Yes.
Yeah, maybe. I only had 3 strategy guides growing up. It was one for Animal Crossing on the GameCube. Hey, man, you got to collect that furniture somehow.
That's so random, but I love it.
What else was it? Kingdom Hearts 358 over 2 days, and Pokemon Ranger. Those are the 3 strategy guides I had been purchased. But
the Ocarina of Time strategy guide, also great.
I can also confirm that there is a Final Fantasy original strategy guide that is wonderful.
You know, I'm afraid to say this because this might be strike 3, but I played the first Final Fantasy, or I attempted to play it on my iPhone.
Oh no.
So if I'm gonna get kicked off now's the time.
It's okay. You can change your answer from iPhone to the only acceptable answer, which is NES. It's not. It can't even be the top loader NES. It has to be the original side loading one.
Okay. That comment makes me want to throw my iPhone across the room.
I knew that was going to get you.
That is so good.
Is that included on the NES Classic?
It is.
It is. Yeah.
Okay. Is that acceptable to play it on there?
Yes, it's in its natural
form. It's the ideal way with save states.
Okay. I will do that for you, and I will also record the footage as I've been doing for a lot of the games I play, and then we'll have that.
Now, if you want to do it old school, you can do it without the save points too.
Don't do that. Don't punish yourself.
I don't know. I use the save states to keep track of how long it takes me to beat the game.
That's what the end is for.
Yeah.
Is it?
Well, the end, like the end, is where you save the game.
Does it have an in-game timer?
No, I wouldn't. I don't
think so.
But the best part was on the NES. You had when you went to the end tells you to hold down reset and then press the power. That is the best thing ever.
Because if you didn't, there was the chance that you could delete your save game.
Yeah.
Oh wow, that's.
I'm pretty sure that happened to me at least once.
I will say with the legacy of Super Mario RPG, even though I just played it this past November, it did have an impact on my life. You know, Paper Mario: The Thousand Year Door is probably my favorite game of all time. It's in my trifecta of GameCube games, which is Luigi's Mansion, Paper Mario, and the Super Mario Sunshine game, which I know many people have thoughts on, but that's, I'll always hold that one close.
That's another podcast.
Yeah, I know. It's a whole other thing. I talked to the RFN folks about it once, and I'm pretty sure they all threw up after that, so it's all right. But yeah, without Super Mario RPG, I would not have had that game, and it took so many inspirations and evolutions from this game that we've been talking about. So I'm really thankful for that. I think that it's in a way, I'm almost thankful that Square and Nintendo split up, because I probably would never have gotten Paper Mario out of that. But at the same time, that's also a huge bummer. So yeah, it's a very impactful game. I think that it's still living on with its different series that it's been split into, and you always wonder if Nintendo and Square ever get back together again, if they will touch this, or if it's just going to be what it is now. A relic of something to talk about, something that people in Europe didn't get to play until like a decade and a half later.
Yeah, that's true. Can we do something like favorite characters or favorite party or something like that? Maybe go-to party members.
Actually, real quick question:
we haven't mentioned the Lazy Shell at all.
Yeah, true.
Why do people like
Lazy Shell is life?
Why do people like Geno so much? That was the one thing I took away from it, is that he was a cute little star guy, but I didn't get why he had such a fan base.
He was never in my party. I never used Geno. My go-to party was always Mario, Bowser, and Peach. I felt like having the healing and the damage of the other two was good enough for me. And I think most of the times when I beat the game, I used that party. Except for when I played it on the SNES Classic, I tried to change it up, and I think I used Mario, Geno, and Mallow. And I don't think Mallow's that great. I mean, I like him as a character. I think he's fine, but
he was very hard to use.
In the party, his
so circumstantial.
I feel like his final attack, the star jumping one. Like, you have to press the button maybe I just do this. You have to press the button so hard to get the star to keep jumping, and so my thumb would always be sore after using it. So I'd be like, the hell, I'm not going to use this guy anymore.
I think he was good against the fight with Yardovich, because he had a bunch of electrical attacks, which was his weakness. Yeah. But again, that's such a circumstantial character, and you don't know that until after you've gotten a game over from losing to the boss.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think your reference is more towards the Smash fandom that seemingly always demand Geno be in Smash, but I don't know if it's so much because he's a revered character as more as Smash fans just want what they can't have.
Yeah. I mean, I kind of liked his design. I think that I could see it in Smash Brothers. I don't know.
There's a Ronin attitude to Geno that I think resonated with people. I mean, it's also why Shadow. I mean, although I think Shadow has a lot more depth in Final Fantasy VI, but it's a similar character where, like, you know, there's like I'm this lonesome hero that appeals to people. I think.
Gotcha.
For me, it's just I think his design's cool, and I like the idea. I like his origin story in Rosetown.
Yeah, I guess in comparison to many of the Mario characters, he and Rosalina have, I guess, the most compelling story because they're both from the stars. I don't know. It was kind of cool to finally see this character that everyone's been begging for so long. But after the game was over, I was like, "That's it." I mean, he was cool, but I didn't think he was like, "Oh my gosh, put him in Smash." But all right.
I think some of the sound effects of his attacks are really cool. Like his basic attack where his arms kind of shoot out like rockets. It has a really neat, is a neat kind of bombastic sound effect to it, especially when you hit the timed attack properly. That's one thing I really liked about him. I think the sound effects on his attacks are pretty neat. So he's also very mysterious, right? Like he's the one character where we don't see him, right? We see him manifesting as the doll Gino, but he is not Gino, right? His name is some string of characters that you can't pronounce, right? Yeah. Which is hilarious, you know? we don't know all these things about him. He's just there to help or guide us through. So yeah, well, I like him a lot.
Part of it too would be is that this is like the only game he's in. Whereas you're kind of used to seeing the Mario Kingdom characters in everything. So there's kind of a mythos to it in a certain way.
Yeah, he's also the new character who's not crying all the time.
If you're going to put a character from this game in, I think Booster might be a much more fun character.
I mean, Booster's just Wario.
Yeah, you're right.
He is.
You're right. Okay.
Like, that's what, like, I remember being pretty confused as a kid, being like, why isn't this just Wario? And then I kind of realized the timing of everything is that, like, I don't think Wario was quite the Wario that I knew by the time this game was made and came out. Because I guess, the first Wario Land might have been out, but, like, it might have been, because I think the first Wario Land was, like, 94. But even still, he didn't get his boisterous personality until, arguably, I don't know what, like Wario Land 4.
So are you saying that as Foreman Spike is to Waluigi, Booster is to Wario?
Probably.
Okay.
I think the character that would have taken off would have been Toad of Sky if people were pronouncing his name properly.
It sounds like a character that David, you would write into RFN and use that name as one of your Skyrim names or something like that.
Please do.
Yeah, that's going to be the next one, you know.
I got to add something to it, like Count Toad of Sky.
Yeah. Yeah, I love Booster. I love Booster's Tower. The music of Booster's Tower is amazing, actually. I mean, it's so perfect for that setting and for that character. There's just so many great moments in this game. And the game's also hilarious. Like, we haven't talked that much about the writing. When Bowser is like tearing up about becoming friends with Mario and he has like the little sad kind of googly eyes, it's I love hilarious. That animation. It's a perfect animation. They do,
Super Mario Superstar.
Yeah.
I noticed it right away. I was like, wait, I've seen this before.
Yeah, that's so good. Yeah, Bowser is a hilarious character in that game. Kind of gravitating towards, having to be strong in front of his troops, and then all of his soldiers leave him and defect over to what the hell is his name? Smithy's side, and they just showing all this.
Smithy, who
go ahead, you.
Smithy's a terrible villain.
He is, for sure.
That was probably the weakest part of the whole thing, wasn't it? It's like they just
like the Smithy gang. All his like lieutenants are great. Like they've got personality, but Smithy sucks.
Bowyer and Mac are really good.
Thousand Door felt like a much more evolved form of what the Smithy gang was.
Yeah, I totally get that.
Also, Birdo, that was really weird.
Just kind of scrolling through the list of characters here. I love the Axum Rangers. They're hilarious too. How when you beat them up, they make an excuse for why they can't fight anymore. Axum Pink talks about her makeup running. I don't remember what the other ones say, but it's funny.
And how there's like the order to beating them. Oh man, I really see. My thing is, I used to, I guess, kind of going off of my experience with this game, I used to basically replay it annually. After I got my own copy when I got my Super Nintendo, I played it every year. Until I started writing for NintendoWorldReport.com.
There you go.
Because then I started reviewing games. Like, it was like, that was just, I do that like usually like every spring or like near the end of the school year. Because when I first started doing this, I was like middle school, high school. Yeah, and I replay it every year, and then I started writing for NWR, and then I stopped doing that. And I have only played through like I've played through like the first couple hours of it many times in the intervening years. I haven't beaten it since like 2008,
which is the year it came out on Virtual Console for the first time.
Yeah, yeah. I think I might have bought it and started to play it, and then like started writing news for NWR.
Speaking of rest in peace, Wii Shop channel. Is that fact?
Oh, yes, that's right. That's
oh
today.
no.
Was there anything else you guys want to talk about before we just finish up with maybe a little bit about the legacy?
I wonder if they're ever gonna come back to this or touch it in any way. You know, I doubt there ever would be a sequel. But
I'm not optimistic.
Yeah,
well, that kind of leads
seems
into.
like
I mean, like Nintendo's moved on. Like they've had Paper Mario, Mario Luigi, like that. That's kind of where the focus is now, I think.
Yeah, I mean, every time they're asked about it, or anyone's asked about Mario RPG, they always say like, it created or it paved the way for these other two series, right? These are the two series that we have now. We have Paper Mario and we have Mario and Luigi, and that like there is no coming back to Super Mario RPG because it evolved, or maybe in some ways de-evolved into these other series, right? And so that's just the way it is. That's kind of the final place where we are. I think there may have been hope for a sequel, a long time ago, but yeah, I think that's long since passed.
Well, and I'd imagine the licensing issue would be the final nail in the coffin of this ain't coming back.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I was really happy to see it on the SNES Classic because we didn't get Chrono Trigger, but we got a couple of really good RPGs. We got Final Fantasy VI, we got Earthbound, and we got this one, and it was really nice to be able to blast through this game as quickly as before, and just kind of remembering what to do. It all comes back pretty quickly. Remembering some of the secrets. I think I executed the Mac skip for the first time, which I learned from watching AGDQ speedruns of this game, right?
Oh, yeah.
Where you can skip the Mac fight entirely. You can get the first star in the game, I believe, but you don't have to fight that boss battle. So that was a really cool thing to just be able to try that out. And completing some of the side quests, which I don't always do in a run. Neal, you talked about, or you mentioned one, getting the lazy shell, the super powerful armor, and Mario's best weapon in the game. One thing I did want to touch on before we keep going with or finish with Legacy was the ultra jump. I am not able to do 100 ultra jumps. Or is anyone else here able to do that?
I used to. I haven't done it in like 15-20 years.
It's just something I could never get the timing down. Just I capped out at like 29 or 35 or something like that. After there's like a couple of changes in the rhythm or the pattern, and I got like one or two of them, but I couldn't go all the way to 100.
We'll say that with playing this so much later than you guys did, I still think it played very nicely, even though it was a bit of an older game. The parts that did feel the most old, though, were some of the menus, like having to go to a shop and buy things one at a time. That got kind of old, I guess, especially with the changing of the gear and stuff. But I mean, I think that's a product of just RPGs in general.
If you don't like buying things one at a time,
don't.
Yeah, I mean that's just one of those things that's like, it came out in 1996.
Yeah.
Like that's definitely a very modern thing. Like I've been playing Etrian Odyssey Nexus, and that has the thing where it's like you get all these monster parts, and it's like, oh, just rapidly tap Y, and then you'll just select everything to sell, like very, very quickly and painlessly.
So back in the day, I had I don't remember the brand, but I had a joystick, like it was like a yoke, like a airplane joystick, and it had a turbo button feature on it. And what I would do playing the original Final Fantasy is my go-to strategy was to always have 99 potions on me at all times. So I would go to the store, I would tape down the turbo button, and I'd come back after a while.
And you love this game?
The funny thing is, in Final Fantasy 1, you needed 99 potions. In Super Mario RPG, you don't need 99 of anything. You probably don't even need 5 of anything. you just don't need a lot of items because the game is pretty easy, right?
I did, near the end of my annual playthroughs, I started to do low-level runs.
Yeah, that's cool. I've done that too.
Would basically, like, only essential battles, and it makes it real hard.
It's a good test. Actually, a really fun way to play the game. Speaking of leveling or low leveling, high leveling, whatever, there's something that this game did that was really unique to RPGs at the time. You didn't see a lot of it. Is that you can at level up, your stats go up, but you also get to choose a bonus to one of your stats. You can choose to your your HP, your attack and defense, or your special attack. I think, is that right?
Ever.
And it's kind of a neat thing that you have that choice in how your characters are shaped, because not a lot of RPGs at that time were doing something like that, right? Chrono Trigger, FF6, you I guess for FF6 you had the Espers, which could help with level ups, but you weren't actually being given a choice of bonuses at level up, like which we see a lot more now, or you might see in computer role playing games, for example.
Fallout.
Yeah, Fallout's for sure.
Quite a stash stat though.
No, it's not as good as the stash.
It's funny, I think that when this game split off into Mario and Luigi and Paper Mario, I think more elements of this game are present in Mario and Luigi than they were in Paper Mario, and just in how the animations work, how the combat works, the abundance of guest characters that are in that game. Whereas Paper Mario kind of went back to, all right, save Peach from Bowser, but we're going to keep the comedy and then like the smaller story elements of each chapter. It's interesting to see how things were dispersed between the two.
Well, I mean, and I think there's a really simple explanation for that, is that Paper Mario is, I guess, ostensibly the Miyamoto path, whereas Mario and Luigi is the Square Enix path.
Mm-hmm. Which is weird, because
I mean, like,
on your door, it...
I mean, I guess the Miyamoto path is more the Nintendo specific, because Mario and Luigi, so much of that DNA is from Alpha Dream, which is headed by the directors of Super Mario RPG from Square. Whereas Paper Mario,
Miyamoto path eventually.
Yeah, whereas Paper Mario is Intelligent Systems working with Nintendo.
Yeah.
Which is a company that has worked with Nintendo pretty much forever, and that's why, like, I don't know. We talked about this last episode when we talked about how I've been playing Mario and Luigi Bowser's Inside Story on 3DS. I just, like, I wish there could be a solution to the Mario RPG malaise that we're looking at right now, because it sucks, because I think even the bad Mario and Luigi games are pretty good. At worst, they're just, like, really wordy and long in the tooth. I think Dream Team was probably the nadir of that. Mm-hmm. I think Paper Jam gets a lot more crap than it really deserves.
Yeah, that one has a great amount of just skipping things if you've seen it already. You know, they know it's the fifth game in the series. Like, let's just cut everything and get to it.
Yeah, like that's one thing that I'll give to later Mario and Luigi, is that Dream Team like had like, oh, have you ever done a time battle before? We're going to show you how to do a time battle. And then there was a major complaint of Dream Team, and then when they did the next one, Paper Jam, so much of it was like, do you want to hear this, or can we just skip it? Okay, we'll skip it. But if you want to see it, there's a guide that you can access. And playing Bowser's Inside Story, like, there's so much of that game is just kind of like there are so many tutorial things that I remember having no choice to do. Mm-hmm. And in those games, they're just like, oh, like, here's a special attack. You can try it now, or you can just check it out on this menu later, or just use it in battle. Mm-hmm. And like it's been a blast and a breeze to play. And I wish those
Partners in Time, is that still a viable thing?
I think by the fact that they skip Partners in Time, I don't think they're going to go back and do Partners in Time. But I could be wrong. I mean, I kind of surprised that they did Superstar Saga and Bowser's Inside Story. I mean, I think they were right to do Bowser's Inside Story, because while I've heard from a couple people that I trust that Partners in Time is not the black sheep that people make it out to be, it's just more like a little DS gimmicky is its main problem. Because it was an early DS. It's an early DS game. Like, I played through it. I just don't, like, I played through it when it came out. I think I got it for Christmas that year. Yeah. But I can't. It's hard for me to pick apart what exactly was in Partners in Time versus Bowser's Inside Story and Dream Team and everything at this point, because I played all three of those games and even Superstar Saga, like I played them in a similar era about 10 plus years ago. So remembering specifics from each one is tough because they're all very similar games. But I really, my dream, let's have a console Mario RPG again.
Yeah,
I don't care.
I'm with you there,
I don't
Neal.
care
I
what
mean,
it is.
the only of the Paper Mario and Mario and Luigi games, the only two that I really have a much fondness for are the original Paper Mario on N64 and Thousand Year Door. And one of the things that, of many things that I'm not thrilled about in those games that went away is the fact that you don't have partners. You don't have other characters joining your team, which are kind of staples of RPGs that I love. Is I can choose who's going to be on my team, which characters are going to join me now, who's going to die, who's going to leave. I really like those elements, and I don't expect any partner characters to die necessarily, but I really liked the first two Paper Mario games where you met all these different characters that joined your teams and had different attacks, different abilities. I thought that was really cool. And then Super Paper Mario came out, which is not an RPG. And then in the Mario and Luigi games, it's as advertised, it's just Mario and Luigi. You don't get other people joining your teams. And to me, that makes those games really stale. Like, yeah, they have different partner attacks and you do all these fancy button combinations to make them happen. But at the end of the day, you're spending 20 plus hours with the same two characters. And I think that's boring, especially in an RPG. I think that's really boring. So that's what I liked about the first two Paper Mario games. I can change things up. I'm meeting new characters. There's that variety to it, different areas, different attacks. I can use their abilities outside of battle to solve puzzles. Like that's a cool thing to me. And something I really liked about Super Mario RPG is that you met all these different cool characters who you learned about, you empathized with, you bonded with them. Bowser and Peach could be on your team. Peach was a playable character again since the first time since Super Mario 2, and she actually has like a personality a little bit, right? She's still a damsel in distress for parts of it, but then she's also feisty and wants to fight for herself and, kind of rise above that a little bit too. And you've got the emotional Bowser. Like, seeing those other sides of characters is a really compelling reason or really compelling aspect of Super Mario RPG that did not really carry over to most of the legacy series that we have, the Paper Marios and the Mario and Luigi games.
I'd like to propose a side podcast where we talk about Mario RPGs called The Emotional Bowser.
Yeah, I'm in.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, like those first two Paper Mario games, like those worlds were so damn vibrant and goofy and fun. And I don't think that really goes away. I mean, the writing is the best part of Color Splash, far and away. Everything else about that game is hot garbage, in my opinion.
I think that the biggest
battle system.
Yeah. The disappointment I have found with Paper Jam, that I don't think this is one of the biggest reasons people dislike that, but we keep saying that Super Mario RPG split off into Paper Mario and Mario and Luigi, and then you have Paper Jam, which is a game about Paper Mario colliding with the Mario and Luigi game, and in a way that's like you're kind of inversing that path, but also carrying the baggage of what you have built up. And it didn't bring any of that Paper Mario element, all those characters that we ended up liking, all the worlds that were so vibrant. It was just more of the Mario cast, but in the style of Paper Mario. And I think that's kind of their biggest missed opportunity that they have there. Because if you were to have Mario RPG with just the Mario cast, like without the Smithy Gang, without Gino or Mallow or any of these other characters, I don't know if it would be as impactful. But
I mean, that's the biggest problem with the Mario and Luigi series is that the games are all the same. Mm-hmm. They're all the same. Like, can you really... Okay, Bowser's Inside Story, you go inside Bowser. That's cool. But the Mario and Luigi elements of those games across, 5 games now? Including Paper Jam, 5 games? Like, it's always the same. Like, they've been doing the same formula over and over and over again. And I just, Neal, you mentioned this last podcast, like, do something new. Let these guys make something else. Like, they clearly have chops for designing games that are competent and fun. Let them experiment, go outside the box, take a risk. Let's see what else they can do when they're using characters that aren't Mario and Luigi, or at least there's other characters.
Yeah, with with Bowser's Inside Story, it had a much tighter focus on having the two brothers do what they've always done, and then incorporating Bowser in these different scenarios. And then that follow up to that was, we're going to take the elements of what we did with Bowser's Inside Story, but put it in the context of a platformer.
Yeah.
They have a lot of platforming and puzzle challenges, which are common throughout all the Mario and Luigi's, but this was a straight up 2D game. And then with Paper Mario, you start off with that RPG, and then they change it to a platformer, and then they changed it to a semi-RPG with and they didn't even call it that. They called it an adventure game with consumable actions. So I commend the Paper Mario series, I guess, for trying to do what Mario and Luigi won't, and that is try to change things up. It's just they're both suffering a problem that is the exact opposite of each other, and it's like, how do you tackle that? I think what a lot of people like with Paper Mario is those characters, those worlds, the party system. That's what they want. I think maybe they'd be a little more less apprehensive. That doesn't make any sense. More, little, less. They'd be less apprehensive with a new style of a Paper Mario game with the elements that they have already liked. I think you could do less of a giveaway on something, like cutting out less content that people are really attached to by maintaining what a lot of people already attached to. Whereas with Sticker Star, it's not an RPG. There's no new characters. It's all the new Super Mario Brother levels, what have you.
I just hate that for both series, it seems like they're moving further and further away from a traditional RPG. And I want, like we've been saying, I want a traditional Mario RPG. And Super Mario RPG was that. I know it had platforming elements, but those, I think, are a minor portion of the game compared to the battle system, the story, the RPG elements, the progression, right? Paper Mario, they don't even want to call it an RPG anymore. The first two games were clearly RPGs, and now it's an adventure with God knows what. Yeah, throwing hammers at people and using real life objects like it's Pikmin or something like that. And the Mario and Luigi series, yes,
flip flop.
Yeah, right. Like, don't use the fan at the wrong time because you only have one fan. It's the stupidest thing. And then the Mario and Luigi series, it's an RPG in that there are hit points and there are abilities that cost magic points, and you level up. But so much of that game is platforming and puzzle solving and timing based attacks. And in Paper Jam they had those big huge diorama fights, or you were the 3D box things fighting. I don't even know what the hell it was, but I'm like, I don't want this. This is not an RPG. This is, I don't know. I think that's garbage.
Taking the
honestly.
Paper element too literally.
Yeah, seriously.
They called it Paper Mario because it was Mario's story in Japan, and now it's just the paper craft stuff. Yeah. And you can do a whole RPG in that paper style. That would be really cool. Because that was in your door in the first one. They didn't really acknowledge that they were paper.
No.
But again, they're tying all these gimmick stuff, and they're losing the RPG elements, the stories, the characters, the worlds, and eventually it's going to be like, are these going to sell still? Are people buying these? I don't know.
Well, they keep making them, so.
Well, how about we wrap up the episode with predictions on will we see future ones on Switch, or is the torch been passed on to Ubisoft, and basically Mario RPG going forward is going to be Mario Rabbids?
I mean, that's not, I don't know. I don't really see RPGs in this sense, and compared to strategy RPGs, is that that's like 2D platformer versus 3D platformer to me.
I don't think we're getting into the Mario RPG. I don't think a traditional RPG in the sense of, or the style of, the first two Paper Mario games or Super Mario RPG. I don't think we're going to see that. They just seem to be. They don't want to do those kind of more serious, grindy, niche kind of games with Mario in them. Like they want to make their fun, cutesy, creative games. I don't know. I don't have a lot of hope for it.
If they do another Paper Mario, and it is in this style that they have been going with, that will be the nail in the coffin for me. Because with Color Splash, say what you will about it, there are small elements of it that do invoke the 1,000-Year Door to me that I feel are very shoehorned in. Like, they didn't see this controversy until a little late in the game. Like, there are these the stars that you collect in that game, they weirdly give you a small cutscene to this backstory that is telling you that what happened before you arrived on the island, and every cutscene is the exact same thing. Or they have like these enemy cards where you can call upon a partner to help you in a fight just for that single fight. Like it's all these, and the worlds themselves are a lot more expressive. That maybe they were just allowed a little more creative freedom there. So I think things are starting to step back in the right direction, as cliche as that sounds. But again, if this next one is what they've been doing, I don't know what else I can say other than like I guess I'm out. I think that I've given them plenty of tries, but
does anyone like items that you use once and then they're gone forever? Does anyone like that in a game? Has anyone ever enjoyed that? Sticker Star was terrible for that.
Why I don't like. Yeah, Sticker Star and Color Splash are trash because of that. I think Color Splash, like everything else about it, like it looks beautiful. The writing is fantastic, but like I can't stand the gameplay. But really, it's time to face the facts with Paper Mario. It hasn't been a traditional RPG since 2004 or 5.
Yeah.
It has spent more time. There are now more games in the series that are the weird adventure game hybrid that it has become than traditional RPG. I think we'll see. I think we're going to see a Paper Mario game on Switch in the near future. It's been
2016 of October. That's when the last one came out. So we're getting a little close.
We could see one announced this year for sure. It might not release this year.
Who makes Paper Mario games again? I think it's Intelligent Systems and Vanpool.
The guy who is the director now, he is not the one that did the first two, but it is Tanabe, the same guy who's working with Retro Studios for Metroid Prime.
Tanabe is a producer, and actually I think Risa Tabata has been more... Risa Tabata basically like learned everything from Tanabe, but they're all a part of the same team. But I think Tabata has been more of the producer on the Paper Mario games recently, because I think Tanabe like does a lot more of the Western work. Because the way that Nintendo's kind of broken up is that they have like their internal team in Japan, and then they have what used to be called SPD. It's like Software Production Department or something. And those would be the guys who would usually work with outside companies. That's like Yoshio Sakamoto, like working with Team Ninja. Like that was through SPD. And Tanabe, he's produced all the Next Level games, all the Retro Studios games, as well as stuff like the Dylan's Rolling Western games, and Paper Mario. And the developers of the Dylan's Rolling Western games have been involved in Paper Mario as well.
Is there a good example of an RPG that uses consumable actions? Because that Paper Mario Color Splash game and Sticker Star, like, they're not even good in that regards. Like, it's all right, fine, try a new idea, cool, but this idea sucks. It would have been cool if it was like if there was a difficulty setting, or you could create decks or create some level of strategy. But that game was so easy.
Like, it goes against traditional RPG thinking, right? Like, you don't use your mega elixirs until the final boss of the game. You don't just randomly use them. Like, you got an elixir 10 minutes into the game. Better use that on like the regular normal. Use it on a Goomba fight or something like that. Just because I've lost a little bit of health. Like it's. Yeah, it's just so, I don't know, just not fun. It's not a fun mechanic that they've leaned into, and it's a shame. I know we're getting long here. David, do you have got a prediction for the series? You know what's going to happen next? What do you think?
I'll wrap up this episode with a hot take.
Oh no.
Are you gonna play all these games, David?
No.
Wait. I didn't say I think Alpha Dream is going to have a game come out on Switch. I don't know if it's Mario and Luigi, but I think Alpha Dream will be. I think after Bowser's Inside Story wrapped, they are working on a Switch game.
They've really only done those games. They did They did the Tomato game,
Tomato Adventure,
and they did like the I forget the name of the hamster, but it's a Japanese hamster. It's very popular.
Hamtaro.
Did they do the Hamtaro game? I think they did. I think you're right.
I think they did.
But since they started doing the Mario and Luigi games, like that's it. But I think that Alpha Dream's going to make a game for Switch.
It's going to be the Partners in Time remake, and there's going to be a split screen. It's going to be great.
I'm
sure, I'm down for that. I hope they do something new, but I would not turn down a Partners in Time remake.
I think Neal in particular is going to like my hot take. I think Nintendo should hand off the Super Mario RPG keys to Monolith.
Oh, man.
I mean, like, what would that game be?
It doesn't matter. They know what they're doing. They'll make something.
It's the same game, but the worlds are
no,
like
but like,
12
okay, if you're gonna
times
do
bigger
that
for some
hot
reason.
take, I'm not gonna allow the episode to end with you just being like, Monolith's gonna make it. No, what does a Monolith Mario RPG look like in your mind?
You see that giant fan? You can go there.
See, yeah.
I'm picturing.
Like if you're gonna come out with a really dumb take, you at least need to like back it up.
I'm picturing Rosalina and Peach looking much different than they do in the traditional Mario.
Oh, so you want to have sex with your Mario characters? Is that?
It's not what I'm saying. I'm
Intelligent
just telling you.
systems, they do Fire Emblem, so like, there is that dating aspect that could incorporate into Paper Mario.
Okay, if Monolith made that game, David, Valentina would be...
Well, no, Valentina's already it's that weird looking blade that like is like a bird woman that just looks like hell on earth. Like I forget the name of her, but that was like step 14 of the. All right, who is Disturbed that made the art for this game?
Did Who Framed Roger Rabbit, had that just come out, or was that around that time?
No, it would have been like a decade earlier.
Yeah, I would have said.
Okay.
Yeah, I think Who Framed Roger Rabbit is like 88 or something.
Yeah, well, I mean, they could go. There's plenty. If they could make some kind of Xenoblade, I don't know. I'd want them just to I'd want them just to come up with something new. Like
I mean, they're working on a couple of projects, right?
They've done the Chronicles. They've done the X.
Yeah.
I just feel like they could make something. Like I was being silly about the looks and stuff, but I think. Like with
I mean, they're a great developer. Like I don't like Xenoblade 2, but I still look forward to whatever Monolith does next because I like pretty much everything else that they've made.
Well, I wouldn't want it to be like Xenoblade. I just think there's some developers that can come up with good ideas and they have good product, and I think like if you just said pitch us what you think a Super Mario RPG would look like and see what they come up with.
Oh my god, I have the idea.
If it's based on a movie, I'm done.
Monolith has primarily been doing Xenoblade games since 2010. And no, this is not the Super Mario RPG cross Disaster Dave Crisis game that we all want. They did make 2 games on 3DS that weren't actually published by Nintendo. They were published by Monolith's previous owner, or at least large stakeholder Bandai Namco. Project Cross Zone 1 and 2. Really ridiculous, maybe a little repetitive and flawed, like strategy, like Fire Emblem-y kind of games. I think what we need is Super Mario RPG into the Marioverse. I think we need to have like basically because Project Cross Zone's whole hook is that it takes characters from like Sega, Capcom, Bandai Namco. So you have you have Sagata Senshiro is in Project Cross Zone 2, and he just makes jokes about the Saturn. You have whatchamacallit. Actually, you know what? I'm just gonna are you guys familiar with Project Cross Zone?
Yeah, I know of it, and James talked about it on our fan a couple times. I think he played. There's 2 games. It got a sequel, I believe. And I think he talked about both on our fan. So a little bit about it. I think I played a demo of it. I think there was a demo on the eShop.
Yeah,
but...
you've got characters from Tales of Vesperia. You've got you have Fiora from Xenoblade Chronicles is there. Chris Redfield and Jill Valentine from Resident Evil are in it. Ryu and Ken from Street Fighter. You have X and Zero from Mega Man X. Dante and Virgil from Devil May Cry. You got Strider, Shinobi, Virtua Fighter, Sakura Wars, Yakuza, Chrom and Lucina were in the sequel.
Neal, you know if this happens,
yeah.
we're going to get the ultimate middle finger. They're going to put the Super Mario RPG characters in, except for Gino.
Except for Gino.
You know that's happening.
Yeah,
and everyone will continue to ask,
Mallow
where is
show
Gino?
up.
And why is there no Gino?
Yeah.
And the cycle will continue.
But like, it's like worn blue garb by Star
That's
person.
right.
But like that would be cool because like you could have it where it's like, you know, I mean,
There's a Mii fighter.
if we're gonna go completely balls out with this idea, you could start off in picking, you know, like Mario from different eras.
Yeah.
It could be like Super Mario RPG Mario, Mario Luigi Mario, Paper Mario Mario, maybe even 8-bit.
It's actually
Mario.
an awesome idea. I'm
or Sonic.
And what happens is you start off playing something like that game, and then like it all goes to hell, and then that's when you get transported into this world where you meet up with other Marios.
I think this podcast has gone to hell, Neal. So thanks for that.
I think my favorite part of that pitch is that when the game comes out and there's no Gino, I still imagine Jordan calling his friends now or texting, and you know, because it's 2019, texting his friends that he found the secret Gino character.
That's happening. Gino and Booster. I'm going to talk about both of them.
I found the unlockable characters.
Yeah.
I hope that there is a Mario from Mario Party 5, which Dan will be playing.
David, I thought your hot take earlier was going to be like Final Fantasy VIII, but in Paper Mario style or some stupid shit like that.
I'd play that.
I would
that
actually play
fun.
that too. That'd be the only reason to get me into
Can
FF8.
there be an
Probably,
RPG
like,
Paper
visually
Mario
amazing.
and a Sticker Star Paper Mario? Like they're both like one of them has that white outline, so there is a distinction there.
The less said about Sticker Star, the
Bowser
better.
could be a GF.
Yep. Yeah, this has gone completely off the rails. Oh no.
All right, well, we
Thanks
better
for having me on.
we better pack it up here so before it gets completely out of hand. So
Yeah.
I want to. Well, before we sign off, I'll just say make sure to go to NintendoWorldReport.com. There is a ton of RPGs coming out this month. There's already a bunch of reviews up for like Y2K, Tales of Vesperia, Wargroove went up today. We're going to have Thea the Awakening review, Robothorium. There's just a ton of great RPGs coming out in January. I think it was all a middle finger to me when I complained back in December that we were going to have nothing and I was going to be bored the entire year of 2019. And now they're like, fuck you. Here's every RPG you could possibly play for the everyday. So
I'll give a tease of probably the next what you've been playing. I'll probably be talking a lot more about Mario and Luigi, as if we did not talk about it enough. Also, Etrian Odyssey Nexus. I think by the actually, I think the review embargo will not be up. The preview embargo is up, so I could say based on the first 2 dungeons, it's a real good Etrian game. Stay tuned. I think the full review is going to go up like the day before launch. I think it comes out February 5th. Also, Another Eden just came out on phones in America. That is a game by Masato Kato, who is the writer for Chrono Trigger and the director for Chrono Cross. It's a mobile RPG that is also announced to be coming to Switch.
Oh, it did get announced
And
for
I have
Switch.
it downloaded.
I didn't see that. Oh,
Yeah.
right on. That's
Well,
awesome.
So it was announced in
Yeah,
Japan
okay.
for Switch, but I legitimately did not know it was even coming. It was getting localized. And then I just saw something on Twitter where someone was like, "Oh, Masato Kato's new game's out." I'm like, "What?" and then found it, immediately downloaded it. I haven't played it yet, but it's there on my phone waiting
That's
for
awesome.
me. But I'm definitely, I will report
Sounds
back. It's mobile RPG, but I mean it's Masato Kato. There's Mitsuda music in it, so
And if it's coming to Switch, it's going to be something that people are going to be interested in and want to know more about. So if you've got impressions, that'll be cool. I think a bunch of us are going to be playing Etrian Odyssey. So I imagine one of our next podcasts will be focused on or have a large discussion about Etrian Odyssey Nexus. So people can look forward to that too.
yeah, so make sure to come to NWRPG.
That's right. Yeah. Soon enough.
And just to let everyone know, if you have any questions, comments, if there's any RPGs you'd like us to talk about or play, just send me an email, david@thethirstymage.com, or hit us up on Twitter. There's The Thirsty Mage. There's also NintendoWorldReport.com on Twitter as well. Just send us a message. I'd love to hear any feedback that you have, and we'll make sure to get back to you. And I just want to thank everyone for coming out. Xander for his first time out to the Mage.
Thank you for having me. It was fun.
Yeah, thank you for coming
I'll
out.
let you know when I finish Final Fantasy, and then maybe I'll come back. Unless you play Earthbound, of course. Then I mean,
Please, David, please. If he plays Final Fantasy 1, you have to play Earthbound. That's a fair trade.
Like a blood pact.
That's a fair trade.
Blood pact. Yeah, let's do it.
I don't know. We'll see. I might have to quiz him to ensure that he's fully played.
Hey, he's gonna put the recording on our event.
True.
He's
Yeah.
gonna put it up on YouTube or something.
I'll put the recording.
If
But
I
also
see a
know the
YouTube
guy.
video of Chaos dying, then we'll talk.
All right. Well, I'll do that. I'll let you know. I'll put up the
Xander, it's worth it to get him to play Earthbound. It is so worth it.
Yeah, this might be worth it. Or we have evidence now that this is going
Exactly,
out. So
yeah.
we can hold him accountable.
We'll see.
I wanted to add one thing. We were talking about maybe playing Xenogears along with the community. So a few of us at the Thirsty Mage were thinking about an RPG that we maybe play along with the community and then do a podcast about and take questions for. So if people want to hear and participate in a Xenogears kind of play along, or I don't know what the hell those are called, but just like a
Retroactive?
Yeah, retroactive, exactly. Yeah, so we're gonna bust out the old Vita and maybe play some Xenogears. So if anyone's interested in something like that, or wants to participate, let us know. Let us know there's interest in. Let us know there's interest in that, and we'll see if we can get that happening soon.
Perfect.
Yeah, I haven't started that yet, but it's downloaded on my
me
Vita.
too. But we got to start at the same time, Neal. So you make sure you message me when that happens. Right on.
Yeah, that'll probably. I've got some reviews to clear
Yeah,
out.
We got some time.
Don't we all?
I did just buy Kingdom Hearts.
We're thinking end of February, early March sort of thing.
Yeah. So look forward to that too.
We got a little bit of time.
We do.
Great. Well,
All right.
thanks again for everyone coming out. And
Bye.
yeah, make sure to subscribe, and we'll see you next time on The Thirsty Mage.
Yep. Good night, everyone.